Hi there. So, my friends, I'm going to be making pappardelle alla Bolognese. So it's kind of a variation of Bolognese sauce so my version has carrots, celery, onions, and red pepper in it. Traditionally, I think it's only onions, typically, with the ground beef and various other elements. Occasionally people put in carrots and celery, but I like to put red pepper in as well. So we'll go through that in a minute. So aside from those ingredients, in terms of meat, we want some ground beef. So I've got about a pound or a little less than a pound here. And we're gonna mix that with some pork. So I'm using a sausage, homemade sausage here, but any sausage that's got some good meat, not the crappy sausage, the ones that are actually meat, ground meat. And we'll break that in and mix it in with the beef. For this time I'm going to use about 6 or 7 cherry tomatoes. They're quite sweet, so they're actually better than the regular tomatoes you buy at the grocery store that are fresh. They're not as tasty as these. So we'll do that, and then additionally we'll have about a bouillon cube of a beef bouillon cube. So that will add some flavor as well. And that'll be in place of salt. So we'll use this first, and then we'll salt to taste later on. And I think that's it. You know, the usual olive oil, and in addition, some nice white wine. So some cooking wine. I just use a Chardonnay myself. That's what I like to use. So you don't have to spend a lot of money on the white wine because it's for cooking. You can also drink some if you want, but it's I'll do about a half a cup of this as well. So let's get going. We'll chop some things up, show you the general size that I cut things, and we'll go from there. Okay, so as I said, we will use onion, celery, carrot, and red pepper as the main ingredients, along with the cherry tomatoes. So let's start with the onion. So I've already sliced it this way and cut it across a bit. So now we're just going to dice this. We want it to be fairly small because this is going to all sort of break down in the cooking process. We don't want large chunks of anything. It should all be about the same size. And so this is about a quarter onion, and I'm just kind of making sure that we have enough here. I don't waste any of this. So as you can tell, so we want it sort of like this, nice and diced up. Even pass it through a bit more just to make it fairly small for the bolognese. No big chunks. Okay, next we'll work with the celery. So you see the celery, how green it is? We want really green celery, as green as possible, because the light celery is okay to munch on with your mouth, just to snack on and dip in dips and stuff, but you really want the flavor really comes from the green celery, so you need it as green as possible. And we're gonna just cut it down the middle here, this little piece. So it's about a 6-inch long piece, like that. And we're gonna cut it twice, so we can get a small sliver here. And so we want small slivers, so we want to cut these fairly small. So see, very, very small pieces of celery, same kind of size as the onions. And we can put those in with the onions into the bowl, get them out of the way. And we're going to do the same thing with the red pepper. I usually cut the end of the red pepper off. It's about a quarter of an end of the red pepper. So if you take, you can see how big that is. It's not very large. We'll slice it down into slices first, really thin slices if you can. And I think that's about right. I'll just use the whole thing. Okay, really thin slices, and then we'll again cut this into small diced pieces. It will break down, but we want to make sure we don't have big chunks. So like that. Okay, put that in with these guys as well, the onions and celery, and then we'll deal with the carrot. So we'll just cut that down the middle, cut the end off, get rid of that. So with the carrots, again, same idea. I'm going to cut into strips first. Okay, nice strips like that. And I think a half a carrot will do, this small size. So let's just do that. Got these little nice guys. really small, like that. That's about right. Maybe we'll use the other carrot, half a carrot. Give me a second here and then we'll do that. Let's do that. Just add this extra half carrot. Now, we're going to take our cherry tomatoes right here and I'm going to cut these. Now, you could sort of parboil these and get rid of the skin, but I think we're fine with the small cherry tomatoes that we can just leave the skin on. I typically just leave the skin on. I'm cutting the cherry tomato into like 8 pieces. So you want to do that for each cherry tomato. Okay, so what we're going to do is take the sausage that I mentioned and just get rid of the casing, and we're going to squeeze out all the sausage meat into the bowl here. Okay, so that's about that much. Now the sausage meat is already salted and that, so you don't really have to add a lot more salt, in addition to having a good amount of salt in the bouillon cube that we'll be adding. And this is the beef here, so I'm just gonna break it up and mix it in, so it's really a sausage meat and beef meat mixed in. Okay, so what I've got here is I've got something called Italiano type herbs. Okay, it's not spices, herbs. So we're gonna add a little bit of this, probably about 2 tablespoons, like that much. This is about 2 tablespoons. And we're gonna mix it into the meat too. So, because when we go to do this meat, it's just going to give it interesting additional flavoring in the eventual bolognese or ragu that we create. So I'm mixing it all in nice. It's all nicely mixed in, and that's it. And now we're going to go and cook this stuff up. I will show you the pasta in a minute, the type of pasta. It's pappardelle, and I'll show you that before I put it into the pot of water to cook. Okay? Okay, let's talk a bit about the pasta that we're going to use for this dish. They're pappardelle. Now you'll see it says le pappardelle because each one of these things is a pappardella. So le pappardelle is a plural to say there's a bunch of pappardellas in here. So le pappardelle. Okay, so this is a 250 gram package. It comes in like a flat package like this because we don't want things to break. So they put it on a flat package with cardboard or thin cardboard casing. And so we're going to use 2 of these, so 500 grams of this for basically 4 people, because generally with pasta you use about 120 grams per person for your pasta, okay? So if you're going to make any kind of pasta, generally speaking, 120 grams a person. 2 of you would be 250 grams, 4 people, 500 grams. So we have our 3 liters, 3.5 liters in this 4-liter pot that is warming up now. And I've got it on high and it's heating up the water. And so the key thing about cooking pasta is that you want to make sure you put enough salt in here so that the pasta, similar to potatoes, will absorb the salt into it as it's cooking. If you don't put salt in here, then the pasta tastes flat. Even if you add salty sauce onto it, it tastes flat. It's just not the right taste. So do it, put the damn salt in, and listen to me, okay? So two tablespoons approximately, so about that much, maybe a bit more, okay? It doesn't matter because that's all going to be in the water. Most of it's going to be in the water. It's going to go down the drain. Some of it will end up in the pappardelle, which is what you want because then you get good flavoring, okay? So we'll do that. Now we'll make the sauce. Okay, so we're going to make the sauce now. The first thing we're going to do is heat up some olive oil. It's kind of covering the bottom, slightly less of olive oil, and this is my cast iron pot again because it's nice and it creates good caramelization. So we'll put in the veggies. That's been warming up already, so you can hear the sizzle. I'm just gonna let that cook up. So this is about maybe 3 to 4 minutes of it cooking up like this. We will in a moment add in the cherry tomatoes because they'll cook down as well. So let's just give it a few minutes here like this. Okay, so it's been about 3 or 4 minutes. We've been cooking these veggies down, and we're going to add in the diced tomatoes into this. So the tomatoes are just going to start cooking in here as well. Again, another maybe 3 to 4 minutes of cooking with the tomatoes in here before we add the meat to the mixture. Okay, so now it's been another 3 or 4 minutes since we added the tomatoes, and they're cooking down here. And what we'll do is we'll add the meat. So we're going to add the meat in, put it all in there. And you'll see right now what I have is a wooden spoon that has a straight edge to it, and there's a reason for that. As I'm cooking this in, this is a bit labor intensive, but what we're doing is we're going to break up the meat because we don't want big chunks of meat. We want it to be granularized, little granules of meat. So over the duration of the cooking here, I'm just going to keep doing this. It's sort of like breaking it up as it's cooking, so that we get the sort of meat grains rather than big chunks of meat, like I said. So this is going to take about, I'm going to say about 8 to 10 minutes to do what I'm doing right now, to break down the meat. Leave it at medium heat so it doesn't cook quickly. Otherwise, the meat will cook before you're able to break it down, like I'm doing. So it takes a bit of muscle power from the arm to do this, but we'll be back in about 8 minutes and see how we're doing. Okay, actually it's only been about 6 minutes. The meat has all been ground in here and browned pretty well. It's still a little bit pinkish, which is what you want at this point, because what we're going to do next is, I don't know if you can see this, but it's very grainy. It's broken down. There's no big chunks. What we're going to do next is add some white wine. I'm going to increase the heat on the element and add white wine in here. So it's about a half cup of white wine. So I'll use this guy here to measure the white wine where we had the tomatoes in it. So it's about one of these things. It's about half a cup. Again, I used about a pound of beef / pork from sausage for this. One of the reasons I use this Dutch oven is because, again, there is a let's call it proper sort of heat distribution. There isn't a hot spot with the pot because it's cast iron. The heat transfers and conducts throughout the pot, so then you don't get these sort of hot spots. You get it everywhere, the same heat generally. So if I turn down the heat, I've got to keep that in mind because it'll take a bit for it to go down. So I just turn the heat down, but it's still bubbling away like crazy because the cast iron itself is retaining the heat. In professional kitchens, they use aluminum a lot because it doesn't retain the heat very well. It conducts it very well, so they can do the cooking, but then they don't have to worry about turning the element off. It'll just immediately start to cool down, so they don't need to worry about that with aluminum. You can also use a skillet like this. This is like a 12-inch skillet, so instead of using this type of pot, you could use a skillet like that to do this. That works just as well. I just like using this. Okay, so the white wine is starting to dissipate. What we're going to do now is add this half bouillon cube. So it's a half beef bouillon cube. I'm just going to smear it in here. So we'll go with half at this point. I think it's sufficient. It's just going to add some complexity to the flavor versus just using salt. So we're going to do this. It's a nice idea to add a little bit of tomato paste. I've got this small can of tomato paste. You buy these at the grocery store in this size. And I'm just going to take 2 heaping teaspoons, like that. 2 heaping teaspoons. More like a little more than 2 tablespoons really in reality. And we're going to mix that in. This is just going to give it some nice tangy flavoring. And we'll mix that in to the bolognese or the ragu. You'll see a little bit of pink, reddish color coming up. And that's a nice little detail. Okay, so I'm going to try this now to see what my seasoning is like on this. So let's give this a go. Use the same spoon here. Just going to do it once so I don't have to reuse a spoon. Perfect. All righty. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to turn this down really low. Turn it down real low. Put the lid on it. And just let it simmer here while we make the pasta. Okay, so we've got our water boiling nice right now. And we're going to add our pappardelle in. So as you can tell, it comes on a tray like this. And we're going to add these in. They're like little nests, nests of pasta. So we're going to add this stuff in. Now, the thing to keep in mind here as well is these are flat noodles. So they will stick together unless you start to move them around as they soften up, because they will stick together. So let me get the other second tray, get that in here. Okay, let's not waste any. Okay, that's pretty full there. It's okay, it'll flatten out in a minute. So I want to keep, get this thing turned high. We don't want things to stick, so I want to move things around. Get these noodles moving around. In a second it'll heat up enough, it'll boil enough that it'll soften the noodle sufficiently. So again, we did 2 full tablespoons, a little bit more of salt in this 3.5 liters of water. So we need to do that so that the pasta is flavored properly. Also give a shout out to my friend David, who encouraged me to do this YouTube channel and to put these demonstration videos together. So merci beaucoup, David. You know who you are. Okay, so again, I'm tossing it because I don't want any of these noodles to stick together. And I've actually been to a couple of restaurants in the past where they've served me noodles where they obviously didn't do this and the noodles had stuck together. It's very common in fettuccine and even angel hair pasta, especially if it's a large amount of it in some kind of special dish. It's yeah, anyway, so to me that's unacceptable. So I want to make sure they don't stick together. So I'm doing this for about a couple of minutes as it's starting to boil. So it's starting to boil now. Noodles are starting to soften up. These noodles should take about, I think the box says 10 minutes to cook. So about 10 minutes from now, these will be cooked. Every so often, go in and stir them up, and then we'll see how it all comes together. Okay, earlier on I mentioned that the pasta takes about 10 minutes to cook, but I was lying. It's actually about 7 minutes. But what we're going to do is we're going to put it in a colander, and we want to drain this pasta as much as possible. Usually I drain it for maybe 30 seconds after coming off the stove. And the reason we do that is because we want this to be a dry application of the sauce to the pasta. Okay, so what we're going to do is get the pasta in here. We want to put a little bit of olive oil in there first. So I'm going to do this, put a little bit of olive oil in here, not too much, put a little bit in here. Okay, we're going to take the sauce and put it in here and mix it in. And let's just take a look here, because you want to make sure that these noodles are nice and loose. So we're going to have them nice and loose, and add the sauce in here. First round, just put a couple of scoops in. We're going to toss it in here. Oh yeah. Now what's going to happen is, the reason we use the flat noodle for this, or rigatoni, is because we want the noodle to stick. We want the sauce to stick to the noodle, okay? So Bolognese sauce, if we use spaghetti for this, you just get all this sauce at the bottom and there'd be none of it on the noodle. And you don't want that. You want the noodle to have the sauce. So if you look at this, you'll see the noodles are coated. If I just kind of bring one up here, the noodle gets coated with little pieces of sauce and some of the olive oil and the sauce itself. So that's the objective here. Oops, slipped some out of there. So that seems good to me. We want to have this nice mix here where it's a good mix of the sauce and the noodle, and then the remainder of this we can put on top afterwards when we add the cheese. So let's do a dish now. Okay, so I'll grab some of these pappardelle with the sauce on them, and we'll do this. So that's about the right amount for one person, I think. In my family, it's more like a little more than that. So about that much. And take some of the sauce, place it on top, and then you can put Parmesan cheese on it or whatever kind of dry cheese you like. And there you go. Pappardelle alla Bolognese. Okay, just for you, David. All right, ciao.